40% of my day is spent looking for things. I don't live in a large place. I live in a tiny apartment, and yet I can't find anything in it. Hello, Stitches, and welcome to episode 6 of the Ranney Knits podcast. It is Saturday here in the upper left USA. I am Justine, and this is my podcast all about the things that I am making with my hands and yarn. How are you? How has your week been? We've had a nice week here in Seattle. It was 60 degrees on Monday, and that might sound like bragging to some of you who are dealing with sub-zero temperatures right now, but it was amazing. And since then it's cooled down, but it was good while it lasted. Today I am wearing my starting point wrap by Joji Locatelli. This was knit as a part of her mystery knit along. It was my first true mystery knit along, my second knit along, and it was a beast. This thing is enormous. It is taller than I am. I'm not particularly tall, 5'5", but still, it was so much knitting, and I managed to keep up with the clues until the last part when I was just getting ready to go fishing, which is what I do in the summertime. I'm a commercial fisherman in Bristol Bay, Alaska, and it just got too hectic, and so I kept up with, I think there were 4 clues. I kept up with all but the last clue. No, there were 5 clues. Kept up with 4 clues. The 5th clue took me the 5th clue took me about a month and a half to finish, but so anyway, this is the starting point wrap. It goes on and on and on. I knit this primarily with knit picks, all but one of these. The pink is Madeline Tosh. I mixed fibers. A lot of this is the Knit Pick Stroll, which is merino nylon. I don't know what percentage is of that, but it's a merino nylon. The platinum is a merino cashmere nylon, and the Madeline Tosh is Tosh Merino Light, which I don't know if that one has any nylon in it, but it is a single ply. There's all these other ones are 4 ply, I believe. But yeah, I don't mind mixing my fibers. I think it makes it a little bit more interesting. I don't know. That's not really true. I just didn't care. I was just going for colors, and it worked out. Lying already. What am I? 5 minutes in, if that. No, I just wasn't bothered about mixing fibers. Yeah. So in this mystery wrap, you start with this triangle, and then we knit it in 2 sections. So there were so many people, you guys probably already know all of this, there were so many people knitting this at the time, and since then, the 2 knitting festivals that I went to last year, I saw at least half a dozen of these starting point wraps at each festival. So you knit these 2 triangles at the same time, and then we joined them at the end in this big cross. So I really like this. It is enormous, as I've said, and it is super cozy and squishy. The colors are not ones that I would pick out normally. And that's what's kind of cool about mystery knit-alongs, is you might as well just go all out with colors because you don't know how they're exactly going to work out. And I guess maybe that's not the best advice because, you know, especially with something like this, you want something that you're going to really love and want to wear all the time. And if you just go for like weird out there colors and you don't necessarily like the way they end up together, like for instance, I didn't love, well, this is coming off a lot lighter on camera than it is in person, so this on camera this actually looks a lot more muted, but the gray and the pink together weren't my favorites when I was knitting this at the time, but now that I've lived with it for a little while, I really like it. It's different and it's incredibly cozy. I did want to mention, so I rip back when I make a mistake about 90% of the time. If there's something in my knitting that isn't right, almost no matter how far I've gotten, I will usually pull it all out. But when I was doing this mystery wrap and doing the mystery knit-along, I was kind of, I don't want to say competitive, but I was kind of feeling pressured to get done during every clue, which wasn't necessary. There was no reason for that, but for whatever reason, I think it was because it was my first mystery knit-along, I didn't really know what I was doing, and I just like was seeing everybody else finish on time, so I did make a mistake on this. Right here where I was, right there, I just went a stitch over in my, let's see, I think these were decreases right there, so moved it a stitch over, and then so I had just this little stripy section was where I made a mistake, and because I was being so competitive, not competitive, I was feeling the pressure to finish these clues, and this might have been the 4th clue or the 5th clue, I can't really remember, but it was towards the end, and I just wanted to finish so badly that I didn't rip this part back. I thought that was too much work. It wasn't really. We were just filling in this triangle. We were just filling in this triangle here. So it was just from, I'm trying to look at this backwards. Okay, so it was only from here to here that I was knitting. Just this little lighter section that I was knitting, and I could have ripped it back. It wouldn't have been that hard. And I did not. I just wanted to finish. So that a little bit bothers me. I know it's not a big deal. I know it's handmade and it shouldn't bother me as much as it does, but, and it's in the back, like, even if, kind of regardless of how I wear it, you never see it. Anyways, so that is my starting point wrap, and I thought I would mention it because I have started another mystery knit-along. This one is hosted by Mary Annarella, and it is called Till the Cowls Come Home. It is a 3-part mystery wrap, so we started on clue 1 this week. So if you are knitting along with the Till the Cowls Come Home mystery wrap and you want to avoid spoilers, I will put a link down below. I will put a timestamp down below for when it is okay to return to us and to avoid spoilers. Yeah? Good? Got it? Okay. this is my, I've said this 3 times now, this is my Marianarella's Till the Cowls Come Home mystery cowl. And here's what I have so far in clue 1. Ta-da! It's going to be a very stripy cowl. So she's doing this through her newsletter, so you get emails every time a new clue comes out. And on Tuesday I got an email from her that said clue 1, so I opened it, and it had, unfortunately, she had accidentally linked the entire pattern, all 3 clues, in the first email, and there was a second email that I saw that said updated version, but I opened the first email first, so I have seen the entire cowl, which I kind of don't hate, because I kind of know where these stripes are going, and I kind of, say kind of one more time, Justine, I could have guessed where this was going, and I thought it was interesting because it's very similar to how the Hohi mystery knit along started. Started with this triangle, and this one is starting with a very similarly constructed triangle. Hohi's, of course, had a lot more texture in it, but this one has a lot more striping to it. So because I know where this is going and I can see what the stripes are going to do next, I mixed up my stripes a little bit, starting here. So I thought, first of all, when I started this, I did a lot of blue and the peach, and so these ones starting here were all peach instead of white. I don't know. It's kind of blowing out on camera. Which did not consider when I was choosing these colors that the white and the peach were going to blow out entirely with the navy. But it looks cool in person, just trust me. So yeah, I had peach in these stripes down here rather than white, and it was a little too much for me. It was a little bit more intense than what I wanted, especially with something that I'm going to be wearing close to my face. So I first of all ripped back entirely and started again after I got to about here, which wasn't a big deal. It took me a couple hours. It's fine. But then I replaced colors here. I don't know exactly what I did, but I think you were supposed to have more of the blue, which is color 3. I think you were supposed to have more color 3 stripes in here than I did. But yeah. Unfortunately, in the pattern there are less color changes, so therefore less ends to weave in, so I made more work for myself. Good job, Justine. Proud of you. That's nice. And yeah, so this is super fun knit along so far, and even if it's not a mystery to me, I think most people manage to not be spoiled, but if it was like this one, I worked really hard. I tried really hard to not be spoiled with this one. Man, I wonder if I should change my settings. I am just like, white background, white face. Oh well, that's fine. Anyways, I tried not to be spoiled by this one, so I avoided Instagram spoilers and Ravelry spoilers until I finished the clue that we were working on. So, and I don't think I saw anything. I think this was the first one that I saw totally completed. I mean, I kind of knew where it was going, but yeah, I think this was the first one that I saw. So that was kind of cool. But for the cowl mystery knit along, it's only 3 clues. I knew it was going to be a cowl. So, and it's a cool construction. So I'm not too broken up about having the entire pattern in one go. I tried to make it darker, but I don't know if that just made me lighter. Sorry if that bothers you. It probably doesn't help that I put this white blanket on my couch. Oh well, as long as my face is in focus and the sound isn't terrible, I'm happy. That's the best I can do. I have a finished object this week. I finished my Slytherin socks. Hooray! These were knit with Biscotte yarns. I've been saying Biscotte. I've heard Biscotte, but it's spelled with an E instead of an I at the end, so I'm guessing it's Biscotte? That never really occurred to me that it could be Biscotte. I don't think so. Anyways, Biscotte yarns, BiSock in the colorway Night, and the toes, heels, and cuffs are Hazel Knits Artisan Sock in a mystery colorway. And they're done. I did the same amount of stripes from cuff to heel as I did from heel to toe. These are boyfriend socks, and they are enormous. Especially like how much cuff he wants. I like shorty socks, so these are a pair of my socks, and there's 2 of them. There's 2 shorty socks within these ones, so no wonder it took me so long to knit these. So these were knit toe up. I did a 72 stitches on a size 0 needle. They fit. They're very tight, but that's what he likes, so that's what I did. Fish Lips Kiss Heel. I've been knitting toe up socks in 2017. I think all my socks were toe up. A lot of them were 2 at a time. And when you do toe up socks, you want to do a bind off that's going to be stretchy enough, so you don't want like a tight bind off. So you don't want to do the most common bind off, you know, knit the stitches and then pass 1 stitch over. So in the past I've done, for example with these, I did, it's not Jenny's super stretchy bind off, which is one that is pretty popular for toe up socks. This is, I think this one is from Very Pink Knits, and it's just a simple stretchy bind off. And I'll put the link. I'm not going to try to explain it because I don't remember exactly how you do it, but I'll put a link in for that one if you're curious. But that gets you a bind off that's got a little bit of an edge to it, and this one is kind of hard to see because one, my lighting is really blowing out today, but also this is cashmere merino nylon that is actually leftovers that's also in my starting point wrap, but maybe this one. Here's a sock that has the same bind off that I did a 2x2 rib. So this is the Simply Stretchy bind off, and it looks pretty good. There is a little bit of a flare, which also happens. It's another thing that's an issue, in addition to wanting a very stretchy bind off, you want one that doesn't have that flare, and that could have just been from blocking or it might be the rib. This is a 2x2 rib, but with the 1x1, this is also a twisted rib. This is just pretty much no flare. This is just straight up. So with the Slytherin socks, I wanted a bind off that didn't have any flare to it. I wanted it stretchy, so I just kind of went browsing the internet and I found the Kitchener bind off. So you work it like a Kitchener stitch that you would do either on an afterthought heel or a toe, where you graft the stitches together, but of course you don't want to graft these two edges together, so you just graft these stitches together, which was very interesting, something that I hadn't heard of before. You can only do it with a 1x1 or a 2x2 rib, I believe, or at least that's the only instructions that I've seen for that. So it works really well with a 1x1. I like a 1x1 cuff because you get these nice straight edges, and it looks a little bit better than the 2x2 cuff, I think. I like it. I hate to say it looks better because it just depends on your preference. Everybody has a different preference for socks. And that's what I love about sock knitting, is it's totally customizable. It's totally up to you, like what you like, what kind of heel you like, what kind of ribbing you like, what size needle you like to knit your socks on. It's something that, like, the more socks you knit, the better you get at knowing what is going to be ideal for you. Which is kind of interesting for me because I haven't knit a lot of socks for myself. A lot of the socks that I've knit in the past have been gifts, and I love knitting socks as gifts. I think they make the perfect gift because it's something that you can wear all the time, and if the recipient doesn't like the colors, it doesn't necessarily really matter because they're going to be on their feet. They're warm, they're cozy, and they're filled with love. I like gifting socks. I don't like knitting men's socks, but anyways, I'll do it. Yeah, the Kitchener bind off. It was really interesting. It makes this cool, like, it's invisible. You can't really see where it starts and where it ends, and that appeals to me. This was the first one I did, so it's a little bit messy. It's not quite perfectly even, but it's a sock, whatever. And when you wear it stretched out, then you can't really see that it's not even. It's just when it's not stretched out, so who cares about that? So this one I did following written instructions that I found on Interweave, which I will link in my show notes. Did I mention my show notes? Anyways, show notes can be found on my website at ranneyknits.com/podcast. I will link everything I talk about. Yeah, I don't think I mentioned show notes. But I will link that in my show notes. It was a post on interweave.com, and it had all kinds of different bind-offs specifically for toe-up socks. So there were a couple that I kind of wanted to try, but the Kitchener stitch one was most interesting to me. This one tells you to put your stitches on 2 double-pointed needles. So put all your knit stitches on 1 double-pointed needle and put all your purl stitches on another double-pointed needle. Obviously it's really hard to do that all at once, so I did like maybe a third of the stitches at a time, and then you Kitchener stitch back and forth. So at that point it looks a lot like when you do a toe Kitchener stitch. You just have a bunch of knit stitches and a bunch of purl stitches, and you Kitchener them and you go around. And that one, like, I like this bind off. I I think it's pretty cool, and I think once I am able to do it a little bit more neatly, I will really, really like it. So that was cool. Then I went looking for a video tutorial because I knew I wanted to talk about it on the podcast, and a lot of people prefer video tutorials over written tutorials, and I struggled with the written tutorial on interweave. It was a little bit confusing, and especially with something that I couldn't really wrap my mind around how it was supposed to look. It was kind of difficult to follow written instructions. I am more of a written instructions person than a video tutorial person, but it was still a little bit confusing, and I didn't really know. There were some parts that I just kind of made up. I'm very comfortable with the Kitchener stitch. I enjoy it. I can do it without like looking it up anymore, which I was very impressed with myself the first time I was able to do a Kitchener stitch without looking at written directions. I was like, oh, okay. That's how you get to, you know, the next level knitting. So I stumbled upon Suzanne Bryan's video tutorial for a tubular bind-off, which is the same concept as the Kitchener, and she has a ton of videos, and she's very good at clearly explaining, and I was able to follow hers. But with hers, she has you do 4 rows of slip stitches before you do the bind-off. So you do 1 row knitting every stitch, slipping every purl, and then 1 row of purling every purl and slipping every knit stitch, and then repeating that. So you have 2 rows of slipped knit stitches and 2 rows of slipped purl stitches. Watch her video. This is why I don't do video tutorials. I actually considered doing a video tutorial when I found the Kitchener bind-off, but I thought, like, well, I'll look and make sure that there's not one already so that I don't, like... I've never filmed a tutorial before, and I imagine that it would be stressful based on just me trying to explain that little part and how much I struggled with that. Like, filming an entire tutorial is probably not something that I will ever do. Anyways, but Suzanne Bryan does a very good job, and she's got a lot of tutorials, and she's very knowledgeable. But she had you do that slip stitch rows in order to make a more reinforced bind-off, I guess. I don't know, somebody in the comments asked, and she said that it makes a neater edge and it makes a stronger edge. And if you didn't do it, like if you did it this way without the slip stitches, it's not quite as strong and structurally sound, which I don't know. So anyways, I had finished, this is my half-finished object. I had finished this one, so I decided that I would try Suzanne's method with the slip stitches. And Speckled Space Sock. I should probably talk about this. This is the Speckled Space Sock, knit with NanoStitch Lab, scientific sock base in their 13th Doctor colorway. And I will talk more about this sock, but while I'm on the subject of tubular bind-offs, so I did a tubular bind-off on this sock. And I did the 4 rows of slip stitches, and Kitchener bound off everything, and her way is a little bit more approachable than the interweave way. So with hers, you don't slip all your stitches onto 2 different needles. You just kind of go back and forth and weave around. And I found that way a lot easier than the interweave method. However, when I did the 4 rows of slip stitches, it made it really, really tight on top, and I couldn't get my foot in through my bind off. And it was so sad. Because I had struggled. I did the slip stitches and then I dropped one stitch and I couldn't figure it out, so I ripped them all back, and then I did the slip stitches again, and then I did the Kitchener bind off, and then it didn't fit. So I pulled it out and I just did one row of slipped knit stitches and one row of slipped purl stitches, rather than doing 2 of each. That was better. It's not as tight. There's still a little bit of pull. You know, so the whole point of this is to avoid the pulling, the tension issues up top, and I still feel a little bit of that. On top of that, it doesn't look quite as nice as the interweave directions. And that could be the yarn that I used. This is Knit Picks Stroll, which I use all the time because I had a ton of, and it is not quite plied as tightly as this Hazel Knits Artisan Sock. It might be kind of hard to see because the differences are pretty minute, I would say. But for someone like me, and the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to find a bind off that I really, really love and that I'm going to do all the time. So I think even though Suzanne Bryan says that this method with the slip stitches is going to give you a little bit more structure, I think when I do this again, because I will do this Kitchener bind off again because I think it's really cool, because it does make that, it's really, really hard for me to show, but it does make that invisible bind off. I think I'll do it this interweave way. I think I will use her method of only using one needle, the needle that you're working with, rather than the 2 double-pointed needles, because that was a little fiddly, but I don't know if I'll do those slip stitches again. Anyways, so that was my adventures in bind-offs. The Simply Stretchy bind-off that I'm pretty sure was Very Pink Knits is a good one. It's one I like. It is really easy, and I'd be interested if you look on the Interweave website. There's some other ones that are kind of interesting, and I know I have tried Elizabeth Zimmerman's sewn bind off, and that might be the same as the Kitchener bind off. I didn't really look. I know I've tried that one, but I can't remember if I liked it or not. I must have done it before I was doing Ravelry notes, because I looked back and I couldn't find anything in my Ravelry notes. If you take away anything from this podcast, please let it be to update your Ravelry library. Even if you don't have nice pictures. So I always just, I take a lot of pictures for Instagram, and I always just put my Instagram pictures directly into my Ravelry library, and that's how I have pictures. But even if you don't have nice pictures, even if you just like take a quick shot with your phone and it's dark and you have crappy lighting, just like make a couple notes, because it will make your life so much easier later on. I so wish that I had done that starting when I first started knitting and not last year. I've only been updating my Ravelry notebook. I've been on Ravelry for quite a while. My Ranney Knits account is my second Ravelry account. I have another one that I used to update, but I only started updating it like January of last year. And I had so many projects that I can't remember when I did them. It's a good idea to update your Ravelry library. I haven't gotten to the point where I want to put in my stash, because I don't know, like, I don't know why I'd ever want to do that, except if I do it right when I buy yarn, and then I wouldn't have that problem of losing my labels and not being able to tell what yarn is what. But still, I'm not going to do it. Not yet. Oh, so I did want to give these some time and not just talk about the bind off that I did. I finished my Speckled space socks. They're so cute. So I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but I started these and I was doing the 64 stitch version of the pattern. So when I cast on, I think it was 14 stitches and went up to 64 inches. But that looked too big. Like, I put it over my toe and it was just enormous on my foot, and so I instead of ripping all the way back, I just left it with the 14 stitch cast on, I think, and just ripped back until I had 56 stitches, which is the smaller size, the next size down from the 64 stitch, not 64 inch, 64 stitch. So anyways, that makes the toe a little bit shorter, but it's cute. That's fine. I don't need a lot of space up there. That was what I did that was a little bit different with the toe, and I'll just do the same thing for the second sock. I knit these one at a time, and it was so fast compared to knitting a sock that is significantly larger, 2 at a time on smaller needles. I didn't wait till I was done with those. I was originally going to knit these on my size 0 needles, but I couldn't wait, so I knit them with my US size 1 needles. And neighbors were thumping or something, I don't know, running around on the stairs. So I knit these with my US size 1 needles, and one at a time, which was a little scary because the last time I knit socks one at a time, I ended up with one that was way bigger than the other one. So, but I think that was because I was doing color work. When you're doing color work, it always is hard to keep your gauge exactly the same. So hopefully that won't happen with these ones. And what else? So I did a fish lips kiss heel with these, which was not what was recommended in the pattern. It's a gusset with a short row heel, I think, in the pattern. And I thought, like, I want to do a gusset. I don't want to do short row shaping. I just want to do fish lips kiss heel because that's what's easy. I think that was a mistake. So first of all, the 56 stitch sock would probably be okay if I was doing a vanilla sock, but with the little cable pattern, it's a little bit tighter. So these socks are a little bit small to begin with. So on the foot, they're a little tiny bit small, which is kind of a bummer because when this yarn is really cool, and it's got this neat where's my focus? It's got this neat micro stripe to it with the highlighter speckles, which I love. When you stretch it out a little bit, like, it doesn't look as great. The stripes kind of become less defined, and then all the colors kind of muddle together. So that's what's happening when I wear this sock. So that was the first contributing factor to this sock being slightly too small. And then I decided to do a fish lips kiss heel, which does not have any kind of gusset in it. And the fish lips kiss heel is great when you have a sock that is stretchy. Oh, I forgot my commercial socks. Okay. The fish lips kiss heel is designed to mimic a commercial sock heel. So with a commercial sock, look at these, I got these for Christmas. And my mom kept telling me how appropriate they were. I don't know how to feel about that. But, so the commercial socks have this little heel, and the Fish Lips Kiss heel looks very, very similar. So there's the Fish Lips Kiss and the commercial socks. So commercial socks are made with very stretchy materials, so they can have negative ease, which means the circumference of your fabric, your knit or your whatever, your sock fabric, is going to be smaller than the circumference of your foot. So it stretches in order to fit, which works on a vanilla sock because even though they're not as stretchy, a knitted sock isn't going to be as stretchy as fabric, like sock fabric like this, which is jersey. I don't know anything about fabric, but yeah, these aren't as stretchy, but they work because the vanilla sock is stretchy enough with this knitted material. So you can have the negative ease around your foot and it'll stretch enough so you can fit your foot in there and have a very comfortably fitting sock. Yeah. You would want a gusset if you weren't getting enough stretch in your footbed. Is that the term? In your footbed? Yeah. So that's the reason why you have the heel flapping gusset and it's so much bigger, is because with less stretchy materials, you want to have more room in there, otherwise it won't fit on your foot. But like for example, this one fits fine on my foot because this is stretchy enough that the negative ease isn't an issue. That's with a vanilla sock. With a pattern sock, if you have cables especially, lace usually stretches out a little bit more, but with cables you get a little bit less stretch. And so I have this cabled sock that has a Fish Lips Kiss heel, and so you need a little bit of stretch here, but I've put these lovely cables in and it's giving me less stretch in the heel area and the top, I don't know, I guess the gusset area. So that's why these socks are designed with a gusset, and most socks that have cables that go all the way around have at least a gusset, if not both a heel flap and gusset design. So I ignored that, even though I knew that in the back of my head. I thought maybe I should just follow the pattern, but I ignored it because I don't necessarily love knitting a gusset, just because it's faster to do the Fish Lips Kiss heel or an afterthought heel or something similar like this. So I have a not very stretchy part up here. I can get my foot in this, and I think with blocking it'll be totally fine, but I just thought it was worth mentioning, just in case you decide to do the same thing. I don't know. At the point I think I was about up here when I realized, like, maybe this isn't gonna fit so well, and at that point I wasn't gonna rip back, and because then I would have to rip back to about here to start the gusset in. That's not gonna happen. So I'm gonna make the second one exactly the same, and just go with it. So I stopped doing the cable pattern. I haven't really been looking on my screen, but this is kind of hard to see, isn't it? Sorry about that. I stopped doing the cable pattern right at the end, so I finished this is a complete row. Yeah, so it's not really showing up that well, is it? Anyways, I did 1, 2, 3 complete cable patterns before I started the heel, and then when I did the heel I kind of forgot that on a Fish Lips Kiss heel, if you're doing a pattern sock, you want to, after you finish turning the heel in the pattern, you want to knit at least an inch of stockinette to complete the heel before you start doing a pattern, just so that it doesn't bunch or sag or do anything weird. So I didn't do there's some yarn overs that you pass over two knitted stitches that give you this texture. So I've got this textured part on my foot, and then here's the heel, and here's where I did the inch of stockinette. So I didn't do the texture over here, so it's kind of not a totally completed pattern there. So I just think like this textured part and then no texture here looks just a tiny bit wonky. Not bad, but in my little perfectionist world, it's not great. But it's also the heel of a sock. Come on, Justine. Like, nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. So then I continued on with the pattern. Totally messed up here. Oh my goodness, I don't know what I was doing. I wasn't even like, I usually have something on in the background, something on TV or a podcast or something going on in the background while I knit, and for some reason, I don't know what I was watching, but it just totally distracted me. I am highly distractible, apparently. I can't be multitasking, but yeah, this one got really, really messed up. But the good thing is, so I mentioned last time that I didn't know how well the yarn worked with the pattern, just because it makes it a little bit harder to see with the micro stripes. You can't really see that texture that's going on. But in this case, for that little deal there, I was really glad you couldn't really tell, because if I had something that made it more obvious, then I probably would have redone it, but you can't see it. And you especially can't see it on camera, so. Also, I talked about these on the podcast, and I was kind of like, I don't know if this is the right pattern and yarn combination. And then I posted a photo on Instagram, and a couple people were like, oh, that's a perfect pattern and yarn combination, and you did so good. And I was like, yeah, I did. Yeah, I really like it. And I was like, that shows how easily I am influenced by other people. Like, yeah, I did do a good job. Yay. So, I talked about socks for a long time. That was a sock-heavy episode. That is everything I have for you this week, Stitches. So thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. If you would like to be kept up to date for all of my future videos, please hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up down below. I will put all the links to everything I talk about in my show notes. You can find them at ranneyknits.com/podcast. And if you like, go over to our Ravelry group and join in there. You can introduce yourself and get to know fellow podcast viewers. The link is below for the Ravelry group. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.